It wasn't long after the Broncos lost to the Bills that Sean Payton brought up a joker role in the offense that was sorely missed in 2024. So on today's episode, I want to talk about where Sean Payton can find his next joker. Now, I don't want to talk above anyone, so what is a joker, in case anyone in the class is wondering? A joker is this positionless player in football that's versatile, good at receiving, good at rushing, good at yards after contact, kind of a do-it-all Swiss Army knife. And the best example I can give is what Sean Payton had in New Orleans with Taysom Hill. Early on in his coaching career as an offensive coordinator with the Giants, he kind of had that with Jeremy Shockey and also with the Cowboys, Jason Witten. Once he got to New Orleans, obviously Jimmy Graham takes off, but that really wasn't quite the same joker role that we saw from some other players like Taysom Hill, where it's run, pass, and catch. And you're not going to find someone like Taysom Hill in every single draft class, but you might find someone like Taysom Hill in this draft class. He also had that kind of role with a few running backs, Darren Sproles, Reggie Bish, Alvin Kamara, players that don't just take the handoff and run right up the middle behind their guard and center. Guys you can use in the passing game, guys you can put out wide, players that can line up pretty much anywhere on offense and have success. That is something Sean Payton had a lot of in the Big Easy, and he really hasn't had that so far in Denver. He tried to get that going with Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin. Williams had 52 grabs, 346 receiving yards, but it never really stuck. And that showed in a lot of the big games, just including the playoff game against the Bills. The Broncos offense was sort of missing that third extra gear. And that's what I suspect Sean Payton will be targeting in free agency and probably more so in the NFL draft. Now, speaking of running back, I do want to get your thoughts on this question before we get any further in today's episode. Do you want Denver to go running back kind of like no matter what in round one? How about this question here? If Ashton Jeanty is taken by the Cowboys at 12, do you still want the Broncos to take a running back in round one? There's a lot of good running backs in this class. I'd say no, but I'd be interested. Let me know your thoughts, though, down below in the comment section. Ultimately, though, I think Sean Payton is looking for a third down target. Someone that he can trust on 3rd and 4 to get the ball in his hands and make a play when needed to. Courtland Sutton was phenomenal for the Broncos this year, and it's not that he can't fulfill that role, but as he gets a little bit older and has 1 year left on his contract, thinking down the line here, this is a spot that the Denver Broncos need to improve in. You look at their 2024 stats, they were 13th on 3rd down this season. Not too shabby, but room for improvement. But they were bad when it came to staying on the field for longer drives. I mean, they were 30th when it came to 3 and outs, doing that over a quarter of the time. And I feel like when the coaching staff gets together and they really revisit the 2024 Broncos season, something they're going to want to focus for improvement on is we have to reduce the amount of 3 and outs that we have. And that's where I think the joker role could come in. Jeff Legwold from ESPN, by the way, had an excellent article on this. So if you like this video, I recommend you go read that as well. But let's get into who this joker could be, starting with Arizona State running back, the do-it-all man, Cam Skattebo. This is the first name that comes to mind when we're talking about Sean Payton finding his next Taysom Hill, because Skattebo is the closest player to that in this draft class. 5'11", 215, solid size. He is extremely physical. If you watch just one Arizona State playoff game or down the stretch at the end of the season, you came away with the impression of that is a player that would rather run over someone instead of just going out of bounds and avoiding the hit. And those hits, they add up over 4 quarters. You may not see it on the box score if you make your entire evaluation of players purely based off stats. You're not going to get that impression. But from quarter 1 to quarter 4, if every time a linebacker or a safety or corner sees Skattebo running their way, they're going to start to get a little annoyed. And they're going to start to get a little, to be honest, afraid, knowing, wow, this guy's not taking a single play off every single time. He's going to fall forward for the extra yard. Those extra yards, they add up, and coaches love that in players. This is where he has the Taysom Hill effect, though. 1,700 rushing yards, 605 receiving yards, 42 passing yards. He had that touchdown pass in the quarterfinal game, was it? Yeah, quarterfinal game against Texas. Yeah, that sounds right to me. So I should also kind of backtrack just a little bit here and say, while we are looking for the next Taysom Hill for Sean Payton, you're likely not going to find the next Taysom Hill. I don't know if anyone's going to be as talented as a passer as Taysom Hill since he played quarterback in college at BYU. That's something Cam Skattebo did not do a ton of. A little bit. They did have him line up at quarterback a little bit last year in 2023, but I think this is the closest you're going to get. So if Payton is looking for that Swiss Army knife, that joker, someone who can run, catch, and even throw a little bit, he's your man. But the concerns are he doesn't have that explosiveness. He does have some ball security concerns, a lot of fumbles during his time with the Sun Devils, but no one's perfect, and I think those are things that Payton can either feel confident that he can either coach up or just live with, because he did pretty well with Taysom Hill, and it's not like Hill was running a blistering 4.2 40-yard dash. We're going to check out some of the other players that the Broncos could be targeting in the draft, but first, a quick shout-out to our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players. We got the big game coming up in a week and a half, and I know that no one here is pulling for Patrick Mahomes, but we can all acknowledge that he is going to get more than 0.5 passing yards. Prize Picks is just giving you this. So take this and then take the less on another Chiefs player. So win-win. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. All of that information is in the comments and description of today's video. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. After Skattebo, the next player to keep an eye on is the Kansas Jayhawk running back Devin Neal. Not as popular of a name compared to Cam, but I don't want you guys to sleep on him or put him off of your radar. He's very similar in a lot of ways. This is not a typo. According to the team websites, identical size, 5'11", 215 pounds. Similar to Skattebo, a very good receiving running back, especially in the screen game. This is where he excels probably the most. And if Payton is looking for a running back that can help Bo Nix out in the passing department, Devin Neal is your guy in a lot of ways. He does need to improve in his pass protection, but let's be real. Every college running back needs to improve in their pass protection. College coaches hardly ever ask for them to be picking up blitzes. Now, not many people think he's an every down back, but what I will say about Neal is his character is one of one. He's from Lawrence, Kansas. He went to Lawrence High School. His dream was to play for the Jayhawks. And while most people associate the Kansas football turnaround with head coach Lance Leipold, if you ask Kansas fans and players and coaches, they're going to point to Devin Neal. He's homegrown, and he wanted to be a part of that buildup, and he's done a phenomenal job in that process. As for the receiving ability, like I said, it's one of his strengths. 254 yards. It may not scream that, but I'll just remind you, in college football, production can be deceiving because depending on the offense you're in and the quarterback you're working with, you may not get a ton of opportunities. But when he got the opportunities, he made the most of them. I don't think he's a bad plan B. I really don't have a great, surefire idea of when Skattebo's going to go in the draft. If I had to put money down, I'd say round 3. But I wouldn't be shocked if teams go, hey, that's kind of like a college football star, but the skill set's not going to translate over to the NFL. He doesn't have that burst. He doesn't have that great acceleration. He makes his money on running people over, which you can run like some Big 12 DBs over. You're not going to run NFL DBs over. So that's a reason why I could see him slipping a little bit. But if he does go earlier than expected and some team just falls in love with him and you're still looking for another Cam Skattebo light, Devin Neal is not a bad target. So those are 2 running backs. As for some tight ends, there's really just 2 to watch for. It's Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. For now, these are the guys I'll keep an eye on. We will expand our search as we get a little bit closer to April, but to keep it surface level, early on in the pre-draft process, these are the top 2 guys. I expect both of them to go in round 1. Loveland may slip to round 2, but as of today, I'm thinking he's closer to round 1 than round 2. I'm also sensing that the tight end position is kind of plan A at pick number 20. just going off of Sean Payton's comments after the season ended, they're not going to go with the bell count back. And hey, it's smoke and mirror season. Sean Payton was openly joking about how last year he made everyone think that they wanted J.J. McCarthy. And then they went with Bo Nix. So you can't discount the possibility of Sean Payton making us, and more importantly, other teams, think one thing while they plan to do another thing. My gut tells me the tight end position has been something that is very rooted in the Saints' success with Payton. Jimmy Graham, Juwan Johnson, they had a lot of guys who came in there, and they were vital pieces of their offense. And it was atrocious this past year from a production standpoint. And I'm thinking Tyler Warren, if available, is just too good of a prospect for Payton to pass on. If he does go earlier, keep an eye on Colston Loveland. His 2024 production wasn't as good as 2023 in some ways, but he was also working with a quarterback who could barely complete a forward pass. 649 yards and 4 touchdowns. He was a big play machine for the Wolverines in their run to the national championship. I like Loveland. I like Warren a little bit more, but I'm starting to get the sense that plan A is probably tight end. Plan B is, I want to say running back, but that's more wishful thinking. Don't sleep on defensive tackle. It's a very good defensive tackle draft class. DJ Jones is a free agent. They don't really have a lot of young guys at that spot. Matt Henningsen, is he even on the team anymore? They promoted him. He was a practice squad guy for most of the year. Iomi Wazurike, the guy who was suspended for a whole season, we hardly saw him. Zach Allen's great. He's awesome, but he's also a little bbit older. Not too old, but, not like a young spring chicken. Same goes for John Franklin Myers. They might want to get their own 22, 23-year-old nose tackle who they can plug up the middle of opposing offensive lines for the next 6, 7, 8 years. All right, that will do it for us on today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. One thing I want to leave you guys with is if the Eagles, and specifically Vic Fangio, beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, is Vic Fangio a Broncos legend for getting in the way of a Chiefs three-peat? I don't think anyone really has ill will towards Vic Fangio. Looking back, we were probably a little bit too harsh on him given the success he had and the quarterbacks he worked with compared to the lone season of his replacement, Nathaniel Hackett. But if he is able to take down the Chiefs offense, are we going to look at him a little bit differently? I know it's kind of a silly question, but I don't know. It's fun to have sports. It's fun to have fun in sports.